So today's National Coming Out Day, and I thought that I would share my story. I think it's something that's pretty unique and special, and different from a lot of other ones. Um, I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama, which is not exactly a booming metropolis for queerness. So it's kind of interesting, and it's really impacted how I orient myself towards the world, what kind of values I have, etc. Um, I've been kind of equivocal about this National Coming Out Day movement, but I thought I would participate, and I'll kind of explain why after I tell my story. So, as I said, I grew up in Birmingham, uh, and I had a lot of childhood friends. I think I did, at least. I think. And so, around fifth grade, we discovered what sexuality was, via the classroom, via older siblings, etc. And I remember one day on the playground that this guy who was popular and, part of the different athletic teams, which is apparently a huge deal in elementary school, um, he told us what a faggot was and described the intimacies of homosexual sexual encounters, and why being a faggot was really bad. And none of us really had heard of this before. And while other people were like, "Ew, gross," and of course I said, "Ew, gross," but um, it kind of appealed to me. And while other people were discovering, their fantasies, starting to date girls as much as you can do in late elementary school, and beginning of junior high, my most vivid sexual memory of a girl from ages 10 to 18 was just dancing. Um, so I never told anyone about this until way later, but uh, once I got into junior high and, faggots started becoming, you're lame, you're stupid, you're feminine, I bet you like dudes, then people started calling me that because I'm not exactly the buffest guy. I mean, I'm pretty skinny, and I was not attractive at all. I looked like a cross between Benjamin Franklin and Harry Potter, and I was not that masculine. I didn't like hunting and fishing, and don't even get me started on how much I detested the discussion of Alabama and Auburn football and how I was supposed to participate in those conversations just because I'm from the South. So I gradually lost a lot of friends, which is really humorous, and those who I'm referring to know why, but I'm not going to get into that. And, uh, you know, for a while, I just didn't really have any close friends. And for a while, I mean by like 5 years. And in the locker rooms, people would really bully me. They would call me a faggot all the time. They would slam me into lockers. They would block me from getting access to my lockers. They would make fun of the fact that I didn't, lift weights. And because of that, they would be like, "Oh, stop checking out our arms and our bodies because we like work at it," and all this stuff. There's this one guy who, in particular, was really hostile and always would say that I was checking him out. And if you're watching this, I want you to know that even now, I have no attraction to you, and even a blender has more of a chance of getting with me than you do. But you know, it was it was really awful for a lot of years. And listening to my parents always telling me, "Why don't you have friends over? Why don't you be more social? Why don't you talk to these people?" But simultaneously having these lived experiences at school where people told me I was a faggot, and people related to me incredibly differently, because just this concept existed. Uh, it was it was difficult. But around the 10th grade, I joined the debate team, and it was something that I actually was good at. It was something I wanted to work at, and it got me to network with a lot of really smart people all around the nation, from all kinds of different places, and, that were not from the Bible Belt and incredibly conservative. And so I started creating a kind of community of friends with these people. And I remember that I found this one guy kind of attractive and realized that, in order to get him to even notice me, I was going to have to say something. Um, so I start telling some of my closest friends, in the debate community. I remember getting on AIM, which was the thing back then, and locking the doors to my room and hiding under the blankets and saying, "Kathy, I'm bisexual." And her response was okay, and just the idea that it was okay and not a big deal really gave me the courage to talk to other people. Um, and I went to debate camp and I had my first kiss with a guy, and I went totally crazy because I thought that he was like the only gay person that I was ever going to meet ever, because there was no visibility, and there were no people like that I knew in the area. So I came back, and uh, I just was over everyone being really hostile to me. My senior year was a big fuck you to everyone. Um, I had my a couple of close friends who I came out to, and they were fine with it. And then I gradually became came out with other people. Um, and I decided that that was probably meant that I need to tell my parents. So I started with my mom because I thought my dad was going to react poorly. Um, and she just said, I think some people are born gay, and she was totally fine with it, and it wasn't a big deal. She said she still loved me, um, and that was really refreshing. And I had misjudged my father because I thought that, for reasons I'm not really going to get into, that he was not going to be as supportive, but he ended up being very supportive, and they're both members of P Flag, and they're both really good members of the community. Um, and so, while some people, this is not to say that all families are going to react positively and that you have the wrong idea. I was very privileged, and I just didn't. I had not come to terms with that. Um, so I started coming out to everyone. If anyone asked me, I was like, yeah. And I had, in the process, because I was a debater, started researching the different answers to, biblical criticisms of homosexuality, natural criticisms of homosexuality, all different kinds of things, so that I could be ready to defend myself at all times. And I created our school's first day of silence, which caused a huge hubbub, and people were criticizing it left and right. There was this one girl in particular who told me that I was gay because, you know, MTV's Next Gay Edition made me gay, and maybe if I didn't watch that, that would be better, and that I should just pray the gay away, um, and all that stuff. Which, if it was that easy, it clearly would have worked a long time ago. Um, and so that day, there were people who protested it. There were people who screamed at me. There were people who pushed me into lockers. Uh, I got notes that were really horrible in my locker. And, I was lucky that there were other people participating in it. But even one of my teachers was just incredibly hostile to me and would intentionally make me speak, uh, just to exert her power. And because she honestly just said, I don't really care for and agree with this uh, movement. So around three, the day of silence was scheduled to end at 3 o'clock, but 3:20 was when school ended. And there's this one guy who had been yelling at me the entire free period and trying to get to me to talk, and didn't realize that I had to go until the end of school. So I came up to him right, right at 3 o'clock, and I was like, "You have something to say to me? You want to talk about it?" And he was like, "Well, I thought you couldn't talk, or you're breaking your vow of silence." And I was like, "Well, it ended at 3, so let's talk about what you have against my identity." And we just had it out right there. He ended up running away. Some of his friends that were backing him up ended up looking like total jackasses as people like gathered around. And all that research I had done really helped. And, it felt really empowering to engage these people. And I got Facebook messages that said that they were sorry. And, you know, around that time had also started uh, getting involved in the Birmingham scene. They had just drag shows and bars and things like that, but it was something that was different from my high school experience and the friends that I had, and they were behind political causes. And so the combination of creating that day and experiencing what I experienced all through my adolescence really drove me to be much more of an advocate and care about these issues. And as I started studying it more in college, I realized that there was so much I didn't know. That there was all these aspects, and that wasn't just about a couple of assholes being homophobic. or realizing that gay people are just normal too, but that what we consider natural and normal doesn't really exist, and that there are real consequences for people who we identify as unnatural or as deviant or whatever. um, so in part of that reading, I've also come to the realization that coming out is not necessarily a strategy for everyone. I mean, if you've seen the Milk movie, or if you've participated in National Coming Out Day, it's very almost kind of coercive, where in order for you to engage political change, you have to come out. But that's not possible for a lot of people in different circumstances, and particularly ones defined by race and class and family structure and gender. But also, why is it only gay people that have to come out? Um, when did heterosexuals decide that they were going to become straight? Uh, I think that this is a fundamental question that's really important, because the idea of coming out itself assumes that you have this deviant identity that's separate from what is normal, what is considered natural, that everyone else is hetero, and just deviations happen, but that's not necessarily the case, and I don't think that we should assume it as such. Desire is organized in a very interesting way. And, while I take all these criticisms into account, I do think that it can be very important and politically empowering, as it was for me, to come out. This is not to say that everyone should do it, or that you even have to engage in your sexual or gender identity. But, it's kind of live and let live. If you want to come out, great. If you want to discuss it and make it public, great. Um, but if it's something that you do not think that is important for you to disclose, whether or not you say something differently, or if you have this big moment where you talk to your parents and your friends and they're so accepting, or they're not, and then you create, these whole narratives that you hear. You don't have to follow those. There's so much that we don't even know that the body is capable of, and so many different kinds of sexualities and relationships and identities, that it's it's kind of it doesn't always have to be a meaningful process for everyone. So that's all I'd like to say. Um, I think that was a interesting aspect of my life, and it really shaped who I've become, how I think about the world. But yeah, I don't really know how to end this, so I'm just gonna turn this off.